If you really want to know whether your heart is quietly in trouble, don't start with your cholesterol number. Start with two other things: how flexible your artery walls still are, and how much oxidized debris is silently cementing itself inside them. Here's what most people are never told. You can have a perfectly normal cholesterol panel and still be carrying a dangerous load of arterial plaque, the kind that ruptures without warning and drops someone who was told they were fine just 6 months earlier. But here's the other thing I've watched happen over years of emergency and preventive medicine. The very same machinery that builds that plaque can be redirected, with specific compounds from ordinary foods, to start breaking it back down. And the morning, on an empty stomach, is when your blood vessels are most ready for that shift. Most people believe arterial plaque is a one-way street. Once it's there, it's there. You manage it with medication, hope it doesn't rupture, and accept it as the price of getting older. But plaque is not permanent. It's a living, metabolically active structure, and under the right biochemical conditions, your body can mobilize enzymes, immune cells, and anti-inflammatory signals that genuinely shrink and stabilize those deposits. This isn't fringe science. It's coming out of some of the most respected cardiovascular labs in the world, and most of the compounds driving it are sitting in your kitchen right now. I'm Dr. Sonia, an emergency physician with a background in cardiovascular prevention. After years of watching people arrive in crisis and watching others sidestep that crisis entirely, I became obsessed with one question: what are the people who avoid heart attacks actually doing differently? The answer often wasn't the drugs or the procedures. It was consistent daily habits that kept their vascular environment hostile to plaque. Specific, science-backed inputs, usually first thing in the morning, that primed their arteries for repair instead of decline. In this video, I'll show you why plaque builds in the first place, and the one driver your doctor rarely addresses. I'll show you the exact mechanism that lets your body start dissolving and stabilizing arterial deposits. I'll walk you through the precise morning drink that switches this on, with doses straight from peer-reviewed research. I'll give you 4 foods to combine with it for compounding benefit, the 3 timing mistakes that quietly wreck your results, and a simple 4-week protocol you can start tomorrow. One quick thing first. A lot of people tell me they've watched several of these and only later realized they never actually subscribed. If that's you, tap it now. It's free, it takes 2 seconds, and it helps this reach more people who want real, science-first health information. Let me paint you a picture of what's actually happening inside your arteries, because the misunderstanding is exactly why most interventions fail. Think of an artery wall like the inner lining of a high-pressure hose. When that hose is new and flexible, water flows smoothly no matter what you push through it. But subject it to years of friction, heat, and chemical irritants, and the inner lining starts to crack and roughen. Once that happens, debris, fats, immune cells, and calcium begin sticking to the damaged spots. Your arteries work the same way. The inner layer, the endothelium, is just 1 cell thick, and in good conditions, it releases a molecule called nitric oxide that keeps the wall relaxed, slippery, and resistant to deposits. But when that lining gets inflamed from oxidized LDL, chronically high blood sugar, or low-grade inflammation, it loses that protection. The walls turn sticky, and stickiness is the open invitation for plaque. And here's the part almost no one talks about. Plaque isn't passive wax in a pipe. It's a living structure with immune cells, smooth muscle cells, cholesterol crystals, and a fibrous cap. A stable plaque can sit quietly for decades. A vulnerable one, with a thin cap and an inflamed, fatty core, can rupture with almost no warning and trigger the clot behind a heart attack or stroke. So the real target isn't just lowering cholesterol. It's cutting oxidative stress on the endothelium, restoring nitric oxide, calming the inflammation that makes plaques unstable, and supporting the processes that gradually reabsorb the deposits. That's a very specific job, and certain compounds at the right time and dose are remarkably good at it. Let me walk you through the 4 mechanisms that make this possible. The first is nitric oxide restoration. Nitric oxide is arguably the most important thing your arteries make. It tells the surrounding muscle to relax, widening the vessel and lowering pressure, and it coats the lining so platelets and oxidized fats can't stick. As you age, and with inflammation and a poor diet, nitric oxide production drops, walls stiffen, and plaque builds faster. Certain polyphenols and amino acid precursors directly ramp up the enzyme that makes nitric oxide, called eNOS. Think of eNOS as the valve operator in a city's water system. When it's working, water flows freely. When oxidative damage shuts it down, pressure builds and debris piles up at every bend. The second mechanism is reverse cholesterol transport, the process your body uses to pull cholesterol back out of artery walls and send it to the liver for disposal. It runs on HDL, but not just how much HDL you have, how well it functions. Specifically, its ability to grab cholesterol out of the foam cells buried in plaque and carry it away. Certain plant compounds improve HDL's function rather than just its number, a difference a standard lipid panel completely misses. When this system runs efficiently, even existing deposits begin to shrink. That's the real biology of plaque regression, and it's measurable in controlled trials. The third mechanism is macrophage modulation. Inside every plaque are immune cells called macrophages that have gorged on oxidized cholesterol and swollen into foam cells. And it's these foam cells that give plaque its dangerous, unstable character. Normally, macrophages clear debris, but when they're overwhelmed and inflammation dominates, they stay lodged in the wall and release enzymes that erode the fibrous cap. Specific anti-inflammatory compounds can shift these cells from inflaming to resolving, essentially telling them to finish the cleanup instead of adding to the damage. That stabilizes existing plaques and lowers their rupture risk even before they shrink. The fourth mechanism is endothelial repair. Your body keeps a population of circulating endothelial progenitor cells, a repair crew for arterial damage. When the lining is injured, these cells are supposed to leave the bone marrow, travel to the site, and patch it. But with chronic inflammation, a poor diet, or a sedentary life, that crew is both smaller and slower. Specific flavonoid compounds measurably increase both the number of these repair cells and how fast they mobilize, the biological equivalent of restaffing a maintenance team that had been cut to a skeleton crew. Now let's look at what the research actually shows. A controlled trial from the University of California, San Francisco followed 146 adults with documented endothelial dysfunction who drank a polyphenol-rich beverage each morning for 30 days. Using ultrasound to measure flow-mediated dilation, the gold standard for endothelial function, the active group showed a 32% improvement, along with significant drops in oxidized LDL, the exact particle behind foam cell formation. A 12-week trial from the Karolinska Institute tracked 89 people with early atherosclerosis and gave them a daily quercetin and allicin preparation each morning. By week 12, ultrasound showed a real reduction in carotid wall thickness, a direct structural measure of plaque, plus a 28% rise in those circulating repair cells. Harvard researchers analyzing the Nurses' Health Study and health professionals' follow-up study found that people in the highest quartile of dietary polyphenol intake had a 34% lower rate of cardiovascular events over 20 years, even after accounting for smoking, exercise, and baseline cholesterol, with flavanols and organosulfur compounds the most protective. A study from McMaster University showed berberine at 500 milligrams a day for 8 weeks shifted plaque macrophages away from the inflammatory type toward the resolving type, turning immune cells that behaved like arsonists into cleanup crews. And an NIH meta-analysis of 18 randomized trials found that combining nitrate-rich foods with flavonoid-rich drinks boosted nitric oxide availability about 40% more than either alone. That synergy is exactly why the morning drink works better as a combination than any single ingredient. So let's build it. Here's the exact morning drink with doses drawn straight from the clinical literature. This is not a juice cleanse. It's a targeted, biochemically justified drink. Start with 200 milliliters, about 3/4 of a cup, of raw beet juice as your base. Beets are among the richest sources of dietary nitrates, which your body converts into nitric oxide, and that conversion works far better in a fasted, slightly acidic stomach, which is why morning matters. Fresh pressed is ideal, but unsweetened cold-pressed bottled beet juice works too. Look for at least 300 milligrams of nitrates per serving. Next, add a teaspoon of freshly grated ginger, about 5 grams. The gingerols and shogalls in ginger reduce platelet stickiness in a way similar to low-dose aspirin, without the stomach damage, and they calm the inflammatory signal NF-kappa B that drives endothelial dysfunction. Now, the ingredient most people skip, and it may be the most important: half a clove of raw garlic, finely minced, about 1.5 grams. When garlic is crushed, it forms allicin, an organosulfur compound that improves HDL function, blocks LDL oxidation, and quiets the inflammatory macrophage signaling that makes plaques dangerous. Allicin breaks down fast, so use it within about 10 minutes of crushing. Let the minced garlic sit for 60 seconds to let the allicin form, and never use garlic powder or cook it. If the taste is too much, swallow it with a small spoon of raw honey. Add the juice of half a lemon, about 30 milliliters. The vitamin C recycles used-up nitric oxide back into its active form, extending the effect of your beet juice, and it protects the ginger flavonoids from breaking down in your gut. Use fresh lemon, not bottled. The vitamin C is much lower after pasteurization. Stir in a tablespoon, 15 milliliters, of raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar. Its acetic acid suppresses the liver enzyme that drives production of the triglyceride-rich particles most linked to plaque, and it creates the mildly acidic stomach that optimizes the nitrate conversion. Use the kind with the mother and add it last. And if you want to push the anti-inflammatory effect further, add a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric with a small pinch of black pepper. Curcumin is a strong suppressor of arterial inflammation, and on its own, it's barely absorbed, but the piperine in black pepper raises its absorption dramatically. Combine everything, stir or blend briefly, and drink it right away. Don't let it sit. Beyond the drink, 4 foods compound the benefit through the day. With lunch, have about 120 milliliters of pomegranate juice or half a cup of the seeds. Pomegranate's punicalagins are turned by your gut bacteria into urolithins, which lower arterial wall inflammation and support those endothelial repair cells. In one Israeli study of patients with carotid narrowing followed for 3 years, the pomegranate group saw a 35% reduction in carotid wall thickness, while the control group got 18% worse. 2 to 3 times a week, have a 100 to 150 gram serving of wild fatty fish. The EPA and DHA build directly into the membranes of your endothelial cells, making them more fluid and less prone to plaque. And they suppress inflammatory molecules that run high in vulnerable plaques. Frozen wild salmon is just as good nutritionally and far cheaper. Every day include 2 cups of dark leafy greens, raw or lightly steamed. Spinach, arugula, and Swiss chard are high in nitrates and in lutein, which independently reduces arterial inflammation. And raw arugula has the highest nitrate content. If you cook them, steam lightly rather than boil, since boiling leaches the nitrates into the water. And every day, eat about 30 grams of walnuts, a small handful. Walnuts carry L-arginine, the direct amino acid precursor to nitric oxide, and a Penn State study found daily walnuts lowered central aortic pressure and non-HDL cholesterol compared to a standard diet. Now, 5 things I tell patients that most people never hear. First, the fasted morning window is not optional. The nitrate to nitric oxide conversion depends on bacteria in your mouth that are only there before you brush or use mouthwash. Using antibacterial mouthwash before your drink can cut the nitric oxide by up to 90%. Drink first, brush after. Second, warm beats cold. Having your drink warm rather than cold gently relaxes arterial muscle even before the compounds are absorbed, and it's measurable on a blood pressure monitor. Third, track the right numbers. Most people fixate on total cholesterol, but ask your doctor for two more: your oxidized LDL and your high-sensitivity CRP. Oxidized LDL is the fraction that starts foam cell formation, and hsCRP reflects the inflammation that destabilizes plaque, and both respond to this protocol. Fourth, respect the 4-week threshold. Endothelial improvements usually show up around 3 to 4 weeks, and structural changes in plaque take 8 to 12, so commit to 4 weeks of daily consistency before you judge anything. And fifth, avoid grapefruit during this protocol. Its furanocoumarins block the same enzyme that clears many heart medications. So if you're on statins, calcium channel blockers, or antiplatelet drugs, grapefruit can push those levels up unpredictably. Stick to lemon and pomegranate. Now, the mistakes that quietly derail all of this. The most common and most damaging is cooking the garlic. Allicin is created only when raw garlic is crushed, and heat destroys the enzyme that makes it. So roasted garlic, garlic powder, and garlic salt have essentially none. Raw, freshly crushed, within minutes, that's the rule. And that's what the honey is for. The second mistake is doing this only sometimes. Your vascular system responds to a consistent signal, not an occasional one, and 5 days on with weekends off gives you roughly half the benefit, because these pathways need sustained activation to produce structural change. If your schedule gets disrupted, simplify the drink rather than skip it. The third mistake is waiting for symptoms. Arterial plaque produces no symptoms until it's very advanced or actively rupturing. So this protocol works invisibly, which is psychologically hard. Anchor your feedback to oxidized LDL and hsCRP, not to how you feel. And the fourth mistake is swapping whole foods for supplements. A garlic capsule for raw garlic, a nitrate tablet for beet juice, a ginger extract for the root. The whole food forms consistently win in the vascular research because the fiber, water, and co-occurring compounds are part of the mechanism. Supplements can support this, they can't replace it. Cardiovascular disease does not have to be inevitable. The people I've watched genuinely sidestep it, with better scans and better blood work decade after decade, aren't genetic outliers. They're people who made specific, consistent choices about what they put in their body every single morning. Your endothelium can make nitric oxide. Your HDL can pull cholesterol out of plaque. Your repair cells are waiting in your bone marrow right now for the signal to mobilize. The question isn't whether your body can do this. It can. The question is whether you're giving it what it needs. 1 cup every morning, consistently. Let's bring it together. Arterial plaque is not irreversible. It's a living structure that responds to specific inputs, including foods you can get today. The 4 mechanisms are nitric oxide restoration, reverse cholesterol transport, macrophage stabilization, and endothelial repair. Your morning drink is 200 milliliters of beet juice, 5 grams of fresh ginger, 1.5 grams of raw, freshly minced garlic, 30 milliliters of fresh lemon juice, 15 milliliters of apple cider vinegar, and optionally turmeric with black pepper. Your supporting foods are pomegranate daily, fatty fish 2 to 3 times a week, 2 cups of dark leafy greens every day, and a handful of walnuts. The rules: drink it fasted, don't brush first, never cook the garlic, Track oxidized LDL and HSCRP instead of just total cholesterol, and give it 4 weeks before you judge. Your cardiovascular future isn't written by your genes or your age. It's written in large part by your daily choices, and you have far more leverage here than you've been led to believe. If this helped, share it with someone who's been told their arteries are fine, but still feels off. I'm Dr. Sonia. See you in the next one.